poor. There is a dignity there, there is an identity there. And it is important that they be seen as rights holders, that they have a claim to their rights, not as charity, but as a right. And I think this is important to underline. A human rights approach to fisheries also creates the basis for individual and collective action, because the recognition that people have rights is empowering. And I think implicitly or explicitly, many of the fish lovers groups and organizations today use a human rights approach. They recognize their rights, they demand their rights from states as rights holders. And I think that has, in many cases, led to very concrete outcomes. It has led to states responding to these demands to meet basic human rights. It has led to legislation which protects small-scale fisheries, in some cases at least. And I think this is an empowering process which must be built on. So what is necessary? And I think these are really, really fundamental issues. The need to strengthen the capacity of rights holders, fishing communities in this case, to be aware of and to claim and exercise their rights, and the duty bearers, states, multilateral groups, etc., to fulfill their human rights obligations. This issue of capacity building is extremely vital. People must know about their rights. There is enough which is written out there, but people must understand their rights. They must be empowered to claim their rights. They must be empowered to seek accountability from their states. And I think the need to focus on critical but politically and socially disadvantaged groups within fishing communities is essential to enhance their participation, power and influence. And here maybe specific attention is needed to secure the rights of women in fishing communities, of indigenous people, and similarly disadvantaged, politically and socially disadvantaged groups. I'm just going to now, I think the task really as we saw it was to flesh out then what is a human rights approach to fisheries. What is the actual content? What are the concrete proposals that will give effect to a human rights approach in fisheries? We've seen that there are attempts to develop a human rights approach to agriculture, for example. What in fisheries terms would it mean? And I think we've looked at, as I said, some of the statements from all our previous workshops. We've looked at some of the earlier processes just prior to this workshop. And I think there is a clear consensus which emerges. What is the content of the human rights approach to fisheries? And I think I will just go over it briefly because I think we will also get a chance later to discuss some of the statements from the society workshop in more detail tomorrow. But I think the key issues perhaps would be looking at securing rights to coastal lands and resources, securing the inalienable rights, including customary rights of coastal and inland fishing communities to their lands and resources, securing rights to fisheries resources and grounds, recognizing natural resources of bays, seas, rivers and inland water bodies as a common heritage, ensure collective community-based access and management regimes that foster equity and sustainability. And here I'd like to bring out this fundamental dissonance between what small-scale fishing communities are asking for, collective use rights, collective access rights, preferential access rights, and what is being propagated through rights-based approaches to fisheries management with stress on property rights. I think there is a fundamental dissonance between what is being asked for and what is being suggested by rights-based approaches to management, and I think this is essential to keep in mind as this reflects the aspiration, in a sense, of many small-scale fishing communities. I think there is also the need to secure rights to fisheries management regimes that securing livelihoods and resources, promoting inclusive regimes that foster equity and community well-being, and that recognize the attributes of small-scale fisheries as desirable for better fisheries management. Another crucial issue is securing rights to culture, to the knowledge, to identity, recognizing the unique culture and knowledge systems of fishing communities, and ensuring the integration of traditional and indigenous knowledge and customary law in fisheries management decision-making. We heard this morning, securing rights, fair access to markets, credit and trade, ensuring an enabling environment for fishers and fish workers to access credit and markets on fair terms and to benefit from value addition along the fish supply chain, while ensuring that trade promotes human development and leads to equitable distribution of benefits to communities. Securing rights to safe and decent working conditions, and here we talk about all categories of workers, self-employed workers, workers in the informal sector, and their rights to social security and safe and decent working conditions. The need to implement the ILO Working Fishing Convention and to extend its provisions to include inland and shore-based fishers has also been highlighted. An issue which is close to many hearts here, securing the rights of women in fishing communities. Specific measures to address, strengthen and protect women's rights to participate fully in all aspects of fisheries and protecting access of women or fishing communities to their lands and to fish resources for processing, trading and food. Securing rights to basic services and to decent quality of life, including to provision of basic services such as safe drinking water, education, sanitation, health, and HIV prevention and treatment services. And I think fundamental to all this, of course, is securing participation in decision-making, in governance, in all aspects concerning fishing communities, in all aspects of fisheries and coastal management decision-making, ensuring their free, prior, and informed consent for any intervention that may affect life and livelihoods. So then, I'd like to end by looking at what then is the way forward. I think we already have a very clear set of proposals which give consent to what is a human rights approach in fisheries. I think this needs to be further developed with participation of fishing communities and not only developed, adopted and implemented in very clear-cut ways. And I think we must recognize the indivisibility of the contents of this content. We cannot look at securing fishing rights apart from securing rights in decision-making or rights to safe and decent working conditions. We have to look at them in an integral way as indivisible. It requires, of course, commitment and action from a wide range of actors, and particularly from our governments and multilateral organizations. What is the role of fisheries agencies? Many times we've heard, oh, this is human rights, is not the role of fisheries agencies. But I think fisheries agencies also have the obligation of evaluating their own actions using the human rights yardstick. For example, we've heard in many cases where communities claim that the introduction of individual transferable quotas are violating the human rights of communities, and there have been several cases around that. I think there is an obligation to look at all measures taken from a human rights perspective, and I think fisheries agencies have the obligation of adopting such a perspective. The human rights approach needs to be the foundation for and complement other approaches to fisheries management, such as the ecosystem-based approach. And fisheries agencies also need to coordinate with other relevant departments to seek improvement in the quality of life of fishing communities, as really they know best what is the situation. So there is an obligation there. There is a need to set up institutional coordination mechanisms but I think this is something we all would like to collectively move forward with. In conclusion, and this is really a reiteration, effective implementation of a human rights approach critically depends on the extent to which the capacity of rights holders and duty bearers is developed. And national governments have an obligation to implement the international human rights instruments. This is not a matter